Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart, distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, and international football, all from the perspective of a couple of Americans. This week featured a single match, our first festive fixture of the season, which was a post-Boxing-Day home match against Ipswich Town. Hello, Keith.
Hello, Dove, and greetings from the nation's capital, that being the United States nation. I'm outside of Washington, D.C., not the British one.
Thanks for clarifying on this show. That's relevant.
Although, given that where I am, I feel it's also fair to say I'm in an undisclosed location outside of the nation's capital. Is that appropriate at this time of year? I don't know.
It could be. You're our show's designated survivor. So, do you have any Boxing Day traditions in your family?
Doing nothing and eating leftovers, which isn't really a tradition so much as we're just all tired from Christmas and don't want to do anything else. But you, I'm told, do have a Boxing Day tradition.
It's a recent one. It's one that we started last year. For anyone in our American audience, and I've realized our audience is actually majority English, go figure. But for any Americans who are watching right now, Boxing Day, I learned in Colonial Williamsburg in my childhood was the day after Christmas, when it's not a religious holiday. That's when gifts are exchanged. Like Christmas was all going to church all day long, and then the following day is exchanging gifts. Well, in my household, we're Jewish, and so we do actually have, with my parents-in-law, we have a secular Christmas celebration where we basically just exchange gifts and eat food and stuff like that, But Boxing Day, we're really not doing much. And so it just worked out this way last year that in our movie viewing roster, Rocky IV came up. And that is our Boxing Day tradition now, is watching a Rocky movie every Boxing Day. So
I would say Rocky IV is the one where he wins the Cold War, right?
Yeah. So, no, but this year we returned to the roots and just watched the original Rocky, which is probably what we'll do most years. We happened to be in the middle of a watch through last year, so.
It's the only one he doesn't win, actually. Spoiler alert for a 50-year-old movie. But
doesn't he, though? Doesn't he?
No, he very clearly loses the fight to Apollo Creed. That the judging is very clear on that.
But he won it in his heart. Anyway. That's what everyone tunes in for, is Rocky talk. Before I don't really have anything in the way of follow-up or news from this week. It's been pretty quiet. I'm guessing there's been no news about Saka?
He did have surgery.
Ooh.
And so the official word from Arteta was many weeks. So I think the anticipation, of course, this is all unofficial speculation, but the anticipation, I think, is March sometime.
Wow.
So, it's going to be I'm okay winning every game 1-0 if that's what it takes, but that might be what it takes at this point. So we'll see how that goes, but it'll also be interesting, obviously, with the transfer window opening. This is Sunday evening, so the transfer window opens on New Year's Day on January 1st. So we'll have a month, and we'll see what Arsenal's up to. This may force their hand a little bit in terms of having to, make a decision. But January transfers are always tough. Not a lot of players are available because nobody wants to sell because it's the middle of the season. And if you really want a guy, you're going to pay a premium for him, which it's Remember, we're just a couple of years removed from not paying, 90 million euros for Mykhailo Mudryk, which is not aged well for Chelsea, and has worked out very well for us. But, so there's a lot of ways that can go. There's a lot. January is a tricky one. And, but, it's going to be something we have to work on. And we have some possibilities and some options. And hopefully, as some other guys start coming back from injuries, we'll be able to sort of fill in those gaps and do some things and work around it. As great as Saka is, and he's obviously, the show is only unofficially has the Bukayo Saka appreciation 5 minutes, but as great as he is, I think what he does is a little bit more replaceable than, say, with Odegaard, and the way he sort of drives everything that we do, especially offensively. I think some of Saka's game can be replicated at a lesser level,
right.
A workable level, as opposed to, there's really no replacement for an Odegaard. But we say that, you're still accepting a lesser version of that game.
Sure. And definitely our record minus Odegaard versus minus Saka would bear out what you're saying. Mm-hmm. So, oh boy, it's going to be rough, but hopefully everyone else hangs in there, and the people who are injured start coming back, and we don't have any new ones. Yeah,
and we pretty much have 2 games a week for the next until like mid-February. So
fun times. Well, meanwhile, before we cover the Ipswich match, I just wanted to check in with you a little bit. So this is one of the teams that I haven't seen us play before. They are new this season to the Premier League. How far is that going back? What have they been in the Premier League in the past?
Yes, they have. They were in the league. This predates my time, but we're talking late 90s, early 2000s. They've been in a few times here and there in the history of the league. But they're not a club of, I think they may have been around when the Premier League was founded. They're not a club that's like been consistently up. But they have a long history. They've had some success over the years. They had a long down period. They were not in the league when I started watching. Not quite 20 years ago, but getting there. They were not in the league at that point. And this is the first time they've been back up since I've been watching. I recall playing them in a cup competition at some point, FA Cup or Carabao Cup, or maybe it was the Capital One Cup.
I think that was what the commentators had said, was that we played them in a semi-final, I think, of the League Cup.
Okay.
Semi-final or final. It was a late round. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it could be in the League Cup. Remember, the League Cup is the 2-leg semi-final, so it could be we played them there, but would have been twice. But I gotta be honest, I don't remember. Like, it's an interesting name, right? Ipswich. It's a lot of fun to say, but I don't. I know we did. I just couldn't tell you when. At least not off the top of my head.
Right. Yeah, so this match, it happened. I did watch the full match replay. I think you'd said you weren't able to watch the whole thing.
I saw the second half, so I missed the only interesting thing that happened. I do think there's a good object lesson in this, and this is going to be a long, involved story, but I promise it makes sense at some point. So when I was, this would have been quarter century ago, family trip to Montreal. We watched the Montreal Expos, the former Major League Baseball team, and there were maybe 5,000 people in the stadium. That's why they're no longer the Montreal Expos. That's why they don't exist anymore. But been watching that game was fun. A couple of neat plays. It's a good time. It's one of the earlier professional games I'd been to, and then this, of course, was in 2000 when you watch SportsCenter for the highlights. And we went and turned, it was back in the hotel room and turned on SportsCenter. What are the highlights from this game? And they did the entire highlight package from the game in about 10 to 15 seconds. And so you watch this, like, it is really interesting when you're going on, all these interesting things are happening. And then you take a step back and you look in the grand scheme of things that happened in the world of sports that day. And you're like, that was a game that happened.
Right.
And increasingly, you start to have that. That's a game, and it ends, and you think, well, that is a game that happened. Mm-hmm. This was a game that happened. I'm not going to complain about the results. We won. We got 3 points.
We won, yeah.
It was a pretty unimpressive game. We can talk a little bit about why some of that was happening, and some of it is what we talked about already with Saka being out. But also, you're going to have games like this. Again, having watched for close to 20 years, there are games that I've watched that, someone would say, "Oh, do you remember when we beat that team?" No. Maybe you show me a highlight and be like, "Oh yeah, I remember that," but I don't. And that's just going to happen. And this is definitely one of those games that when the season's over, let's put it this way. It's not going to be the kind of game like last year, Fulham, or the West Ham loss or the Aston Villa loss, where you go, "Oh, if only we had done this, we'd have won the title." This is not going to be a game we remember for any of those reasons. I just say that.
It was a little frustrating. This felt like it should have been an opportunity to kind of reinforce our goal difference a little bit. Like, we should have been able to convert more chances against them. Like, we didn't. They defended us fairly successfully, obviously only conceding one goal against us. It does feel, though, like we should have been able to capitalize better on the chances that we did have when we did break through. There's that one particular header from Gabriel off of corner kick that just just by an inch missed the crossbar. Like, there's a couple plays like that where, who knows, if that had gone in, that might have changed the course of the match and we might have ended up with a 5-0, 6-0 type victory, which I would have liked to see. And it's frustrating that we didn't get that, but obviously still 3 points. So, we'll take it. But.
Right. And that, I think, goes a little bit to the other, to sort of the, admittedly, I've been reading some of the post-game commentary about, the return of boring Arsenal, 1-0 and all of that. I mean, your Gabriel's header was a foot wide. There was the play. I am remembering this, right? There was a play where I think was Partey was pulled down in the box and probably should have been a penalty and wasn't given. Was that this game or was that the Crystal Palace ones?
I think something similar happened in Crystal Palace, and I think it was Partey in that one. There was a different play with a different player. It was not Partey. Okay. Something like that did happen in this one where there was an arguable penalty. There was another one that was given as a foul because it was just outside the 18-yard box, and we ended up blowing that free kick. Yeah. It just bounced off the wall. But
those are the kind of marginal things that, you get, and some days you get those calls and these days, or, you get that play, just a couple inches here and there. And then we didn't. I mean, we talked about when, Raheem Sterling, how close he is to a goal, and he bashes one off the crossbar. Like, how many times did Jesus just miss? So, I mean, they completely dominated this game. Ipswich, I think I saw has generated like less than half an expected goal. Like, they showed very little going forward. And part of that was they're just from the beginning, right? Like we've seen so many times this season, they're going to sit back, 10 behind the ball, 10 in the box. Even when they went down a goal, you don't see...
They didn't change anything.
Yeah. There's one or two times where they're coming forward and you get a little nervous. You think, oh no, not again. And they're just, the shot just kind of rolls in nicely and
or even more than that. So like the two nerviest moments for me were at the very beginning of both halves when they drove toward the goal, and mostly I think our defense took care of it. I don't think they were really self-destructed, but so many other times, and this happened, there's one particular time I can think of with Hutchinson, who by the way, so the commentators mentioned, I guess he was a product of Arsenal's academy, and they said that he got transferred to Chelsea. I guess he was like 19 years old or something like that. And every time he was on the ball, he was getting booed. Yeah, which seems a little petty.
As I recall, I remember some of the conversation. I gotta be honest, I don't really follow some of the youth movement as much, but as I recall, there was a little bit of a dust up because of the way he left for Chelsea.
Yeah,
and essentially like either ran down his contract or asked for a way out. So we basically got nothing for him, and then Chelsea was able to flip him for a bunch of money. That there was a little bit of that. I don't want to say too much because I don't remember the details.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's not. I mean, we sort of talked about Arsenal. I think, and a lot of clubs do this too. We care about our own. Think about the guys we talked about, the Fulham guys who are former Arsenal players.
Yep.
And how it feels to see them back again, and how we kind of support them, even though we obviously want them to lose on that day.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's normally how it goes. Something about this one has rankled some people.
I gotcha.
I don't remember the details of it, so I don't want to go into it. But yeah, there were some people were not thrilled about it, and that's going to happen now and again.
Well, yeah. So there's one time in particular with Hutchinson I remember, but there were a few times where they were waiting for their chance and they were able to drive the ball up the field, and then they just self-destructed. They just like let a pass go out of touch, or would just like turn the ball over carelessly. Like, it was just stuff like that is what led me later in the match every time they did get the ball in our half. I didn't really care anymore because they had shown that between Saliba and our other top-notch defenders dealing with them readily, they didn't even give our defense too much to do most of the time. So.
Right, and they were not pushing forward. They had recently, I think, gotten thumped in a recent game, and I think there was a little bit of the, well, let's not let that happen to us. I think it's a little bit of, going away to Arsenal and losing 1-0 is not a bad result if you're Ipswich.
Oh, no, that's probably just about the best they could have realistically hoped for.
I mean, there's a realistic chance of a smash and grab and, either a point or three, but, they're on 12 points. They're currently 19th in the league. They're 4 points from safety. And that's after. Now, granted, there are a bunch of games today, so they're now 4 points from safety after today. I mean, they're right in the mix as far as maybe getting their way out. But I mean, let's put it this way: that team we played today that team we played earlier this week is not going anywhere.
No, yeah.
Well, let me rephrase that: they are going back to the championship.
Not going anywhere good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, I'd say that's most of what there was worth talking about in the match. I mean, there's one really weird thing that you would have missed in the first half. It was toward the end, it was in the 36th minute, where I forget why it was given. I think the referee may have blown the whistle like after someone went down or something, but he gave a drop ball to Ipswich, and he was taking a long time to drop the ball, like to actually give them the ball. And then after he dropped the ball, it took the Ipswich player nearest the ball a long time to do anything with it, to make contact with it. So Trossard just came in and tried playing the ball because it seemed like he should have been able to, but the ref blew the whistle and did the drop ball over again, which that's something I hadn't seen before.
I mean, I was under the impression that delaying the restart and wasting time was a card. So it's interesting that that's not being done. I'm sorry, my layering the sarcasm on thickly enough on that one. It is what it is. It is what it is.
I didn't necessarily want a yellow card out of it, but I think by the time Trossard came in and played the ball, it seemed fair to me. It doesn't seem like the whistle should have been blown.
Right. And it's not even so much that there should be a card given in that instance, but because we have seen it given.
Right.
I'm not going to do it. We're not going to talk about the referees. We're not going to talk about it. It's little peek behind the curtain here to people. We debated even doing this show because it's an interesting game to talk about, and I think both of us are kind of in the same place that there's no, and I've maybe it's just that I've beaten this into you at this point. There's no such thing as a bad win. There's nothing wrong with grinding out a 1-0 win over a team that I don't want to say it's not trying, but that's not what are you gonna that's kind of what you have to do with that. And again, it's a team, facing a team we're missing one of our key offensive creators. I mean, let me ask you, I think we saw what the most likely outcome for the short term is, which is Martinelli plays on the right wing. I think we'll probably see Sterling in there as well. We'll probably see them rotated. But Martinelli on the right wing, I mean, I saw the highlight. He has a nice cross to Trossard, who ends up setting up the goal.
Right.
I don't know. From what I saw, I thought he was, again, it's so hard to tell. I thought he was okay. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any, I don't know. I thought he played okay today. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I did. I mean, and with what you're talking about, kind of doing the same thing as Saka, but not quite as well, I think he fits that role on the right wing. Honestly, he's probably playing about as well on the right wing as he has been recently on the left wing. He hasn't been at the top of his game recently, period.
Yeah, I mean, he's been inconsistent this season, as has Trossard, and obviously Jesus. I'd be interested to see if that ends up getting us. We end up getting to see a much longer run out with Sterling. Obviously, he's been hurt. But I think
Sterling has been. I think I missed that.
Yeah, he was hurt out. He was out the last game as well, so we were without Saka, or he was out this game also. It sounds like it's not a serious thing, but it's enough to keep him out of the game. Which again, the kind of, it's just a small thing. It's not a big deal. It's the kind of thing that like you and I couldn't walk, but he's out there. Well, okay, he can't run around for 90 minutes. But anyway, I thought he was okay. Again, Trossard, it's so hard to tell. I guess the one thing I'd like to see you'd like to see a little more of, because so much of our offense is predicated on driving down the wings and sort of throwing in the crosses deep in the box. You almost wonder if you'd like to see a little more driving runs. I saw Timber do it at one point, saw Odegaard do it at one point. You almost like to see some of those driving runs in from the midfield straight into the box.
Yeah, those were definitely the moments that caught my attention the most when we didn't end up scoring. But yeah, like you see an opportunity, just push the ball through. They were almost powerless to stop us in any duel. We were winning duels left and right. I mean, there's nothing they could do to stop us when we had the ball.
Right, and if you're Arteta, like he's talked about this, he wants that element of control, and part of that control comes from, Arteta's perfectly happy to win a game 1-0. Like that doesn't bother him in the slightest. It doesn't bother me in the slightest either. I'm okay with that. But I'm utilitarian like that when it comes to our sports. I've watched a lot of games for a lot of teams over the years. As we said, no such thing as a bad win. I want to win. I don't care how. I don't care what, that's the way to do it. He's perfectly happy though getting a goal and then just taking the air out of the ball and saying let's just control it. He likes that idea of control. He hated that Palace game. Yes, it was 5-1, but we talked about it was wide. There were quite a few stretches of that game where it was wide open. And I don't want to say we were lucky that we only gave up the one goal, but it could have easily been 2 or 3. It makes that game a little dicier. And if Ipswich is just going to sit back, I'll take it. It is going to be an interesting stretch with so many games, us trying to move pieces around and figure out what is the most potent lineup we can put together. And are there things we can do a little differently without having that kind of strong wing play? I mean, think about it. The one thing we've never been able to recreate this season is that right-sided attack, Odegaard, Saka, and Ben White. Ben White's been out.
Right.
I mean, he's been out for a while now. Odegaard
practically
missed
all
time.
season.
Yeah, Odegaard's been obviously missed some time. Saka's now out, will be for a while. Like we've just never been able to quite get that there. And because of some movement around the left side, which was sort of where we thought maybe we could work on, hasn't had a chance to really work together. And so, there's a lot of there's a lot of figuring out on the fly, but that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. You there's the plan, and then what you do when the plan stops working. So I don't know. I'm not going to complain about the result. Actually, honestly, the Boxing Day went pretty swimmingly for Arsenal, outside of Liverpool winning, because of course they did. Other than that, Chelsea drew and dropped points. Spurs lost, which is hilarious. United was bad. I mean, those teams, I laugh at Spurs and United because I can. The fact is they're nowhere close to us. They're not a team that should remotely bother us. Chelsea dropped points, which is good. I think today,
right. So that puts us in second place now, right?
We're in second. Actually, as of today, there were a handful of games today. We're now currently in third. Nottingham Forest got a win at Everton, which, to be fair, Everton, stinks. But Nottingham Forest is currently sitting in second. They're a point ahead of us. Now, their goal difference is +7, whereas ours is +19. But their defense has been very good. They've only given up 19 goals, which is third best in the league behind us and Liverpool. We're at 16. Liverpool's at 17. Liverpool won again, which is the more annoying thing. But yeah, we play our next game, our New Year's Day game against Brentford is going to be game number 19. We'll hit the halfway point. Right. If we win, we go ahead of Forest. Liverpool currently is 9 points ahead of us with a game in hand. Well, actually, currently no, we're even on games played.
Right. They will have a game in hand once we play. Right.
Because they'll have to make up that Everton game, which they'll announce it at some point. We'll figure it out. Obviously, they're still in all competitions as well. Champions League. They got the 2 semifinals of the League Cup. Obviously, the FA Cup will kick off in a couple of weeks. once we get to the new year. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of games coming for everybody, and we'll see. I mean, Liverpool certainly had a really great first half to the season. We know they've got they've had their tougher road games are going to come as we go into the second half. We get some of those bigger clubs at home. On the other hand, our game against Liverpool, fairly certain it's up at Anfield, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I'm not going to say we slayed that dragon. But we did get a draw out there last year. Like as we talked about, I think I'm not afraid to go into Anfield the way we were, even when we started the show 2 or 3 years ago. Like I'm not afraid to go into Anfield anymore. But we'll see. We need a lot, a lot of things. There's a lot of time between now and May. And same with Forest. I mean, into their credit, Forest is definitely staying up, obviously, but they're they're well in the hunt for the Champions League spaces. I mean, Bournemouth is there in 6th. Brentford's a dangerous one, but anyway, I'm sorry, I'm just starting to stare at the table and looking at things. Yeah, currently,
I mean, how much of this is just because of the vacuum left by Manchester City's precipitous and unexpected fall?
I mean, I think first and foremost, it's really about Liverpool. They've got 14 wins from 18 games. That's really good. And only 1 loss. So they've had a very good season. Now, and I've seen some Arsenal fans. I don't think they're entirely wrong, but you could nitpick their record slightly. They managed to play us without Saliba. They managed to play some games, some slightly weaker opponents. Some of their opponents were at a weaker state than when we played them, or when other than at a weaker point of their season. They've gotten they've kind of outperformed some of their underlying numbers a little bit. Obviously, we talked about they played a lot of these games, tougher games at home. I don't think any of those things are wrong, but also, we know they're a good team. We know they're a talented team. We know they've got a lot of good players. They're playing really well. Again, it's a long time between now and the end of the season. They're going to drop some points. I doubt they keep up this pace the rest of the way. I mean, to break 90 points would be a lot. And again, the games are good. Same for us. The games are going to get there's going to continue to increase. They're going to increase in intensity as well, right? I mean, those semifinal games are going to be wild, and they're going to be intense, and they're going to be high energy. And then, by the way, 3 days later, you got to turn it back around and play a league game against a motivated opponent who didn't play a midweek game. So all the things we're about to face, they're going to go through as well. So,
right.
And again, we talk about the quality of their opposition. I mean, they beat Real Madrid. They have some good Champions League wins as well. They've looked really good in all competitions. So City being down. Yeah, I'm still not sure what to make of that. And what it means for the season as a whole. I think they are. What was I going to say about that? I mean, I think think about where we were in about March of last year. We were talking about that 3-way title race between City, Liverpool, and Arsenal. It may just be there's really only 2 teams in the title race. Now, I say that. We're currently in 3rd. The team in 2nd, Forest. Look, everyone thinks they're going to fall back. And they probably will. But then you've also got Chelsea there. Now, even Chelsea will tell you they're probably too inconsistent to really compete for a title given their youth and everything. But that's still a really talented team, a really dangerous team. So they're, we'll see if they end up going away. And, City's going through their struggles, but through all their struggles, our best case scenario, if we were to win on New Year's Day, we'd be 8 points ahead of them. Which is not an insurmountable gap for what we've seen from them. I don't think we're getting that kind of run from them to close out the season, but this is
it's the gap that we're trying to overcome from Liverpool, basically. I mean, it's
yeah. I mean, I'll say this: I think if Liverpool is sitting there, I mean, Liverpool is obviously the favorite, and they should be. And I think if there's a team that's likely to take them to catch them and overhaul them, it's us.
Yeah.
But they're still the favorite. Like we talked about, they're still the favorites, and that's just until we actually get closer. That's just how it's going to be. And as I recall, I'm going to pull up our schedule really quickly because just looking at it, we don't go to Anfield until May 10th.
Wow,
that's the second to last game of the season. or third to last. Then we have 2 games after that. Like,
that's going to be tense, especially if we've closed the gap by then.
Yeah, or alternately, I mean, it could very easily be a game at which they could win the title.
Right.
And we should point out our 2 games after that are home to Newcastle and at Southampton. So I'm not saying we're going to get 6 points from those, but you feel pretty good about at Newcastle at home, and then Southampton, who's awful and is definitely going down. So that could end up being a huge one, but obviously it'll be interesting to see. We have a lot of games between now and then. I'm just looking at it. I mean, that's right now just on our schedule. We're looking at we have 25 games currently scheduled for 2025, and that currently is game 23.
Yeah,
and that's not assuming we don't advance. Well, let me rephrase that, because we do have champion. We will. There's a good chance we advance in the FA Cup. We're probably almost certainly going to advance out of the league phase in the Champions League. I don't think it's been clinched yet, but we're definitely in good shape.
It's looking
to do
good.
That. Yeah, with the games they have left. So it's an interesting place to take stock as we end the calendar year. I mean, I'll say this: it's been whatever we think about it, and I know the lack of trophies is frustrating. It's been a heck of a year. Like, we've been insanely good for this calendar year, and I know the calendar year doesn't really count in terms of anything, but we've been really freaking good. In 2024 was a very good year for Arsenal, and the destination is important, and we want to win trophies, but the journey is part of it too. And I like it when we win lots of games. Winning is fun.
Of course. So one question. It's kind of funny when I'm watching the matches, and I don't know what determines this. There's no rhyme or reason as far as I can tell, but sometimes the broadcast ends, like the referee blows his whistle to end the match, and the feed cuts like 3 seconds later. And it definitely always happens with the Champions League. I've noticed that. But in Premier League matches, sometimes they linger for a while, sometimes they don't. I don't know what determines that. But there are a couple times recently where I've noticed them lingering after a victory of ours. And the previous time I noticed, it was the one where Saliba and Timber had each scored. And they played Tequila for Saliba's goal. And then later on, they played Timber by Pitbull with Kesha for Urian Timber's goal. And we talked about that. It was funny. Now, after this match, they played Waka Waka by Shakira. Kai Havertz had the only goal in the match. And I remember you mentioning something in the past. You've said Waka Waka when Kai Havertz has scored or won a game for us. And I kind of chuckled, but I didn't really get it. I wasn't sure where that was coming from. Where's the association with Waka Waka?
So the Shakira song, was it This Time for Africa, I think it's called? That's the basis for the Kai Havertz song.
Which, down the drain. Oh, that's...
Yes.
Gosh.
Yeah, it's Amina. Hey, Waka Waka, hey, 60 million down the drain. Kai Havertz scores again. Yes, that is exactly what that is.
So I've never actually heard that whole song. I only knew it exists because I use this app, Simply Piano, I've been using for years now to learn to play piano. And that's one of the songs on there. And so I've played along to it a little bit, but never really listened to it, never really paid attention. I never made the connection. That makes sense.
So that's what that is a reference to. Yeah. So once you pick up on that, and that makes sense. They're playing the guy's song, as it were.
That's funny. They've kind of embraced that, or he may have even embraced that.
I think that as long as he doesn't dislike it,
right?
Then let's have some fun with this. The fans know what it is. I mean, the same thing. With Tequila and Saliba,
right.
Yeah, that is, as long as that's once you know what it is, well, then of course that's what you're going to do.
I mean, part of me wondered how much it was like in Major League Baseball, like the players pick their walkout songs, and that's a very personal choice what they want to play when they're walking up to home plate or something,
Yeah, no, this is definitely, I think, drawn from the song. This is one I have to. It is an interesting bit about this. The fans are much more influential. Well, I shouldn't say much more influential, but the fans certainly have a great degree of influence on how this is done, and the fans sort of pick the songs for the players.
Okay.
Like it's like giving yourself it's like a nickname. You can't give yourself a nickname. Like it just doesn't
Right.
it doesn't work.
Yeah, I see that.
So in that case, the players you can't give yourself a nickname. So the players don't give themselves the song.
Right.
It depends. Like because you have Saliba and Tequila, you've got Havertz and Shakira. With Timber, it's just the name. I don't think there's any.
No, yeah, nothing deeper. Yeah.
And granted, given his age and his name, I'm sure he's heard that many times, and he's either just kind of cool with it at this point, or he hates it with a fiery passion. And there's nothing he can do about it because that's just sorry,
right?
It's going down.
All right. Well, who is your player of the week this week?
This week. So again, this is from watching just half the game. Basically, I'm gonna give a shout out to Miles Lewis Skelly. I thought he continues to be very solid. He had a few really kind of cheeky plays, like the kind of plays that clearly speak to a player feeling confident in himself, and he should feel confident. He's been playing well. Obviously, his age. This has been because of injuries, he's gotten a really good run out here, and he had a few instances in this game too where he got into it a little bit with, some of the Ipswich players, and it's older guys trying to give it to a young guy trying to get him off his game, and it's fun to see him give it back a little bit. But you remember someone pointed this out, like. He's the guy who picked up the yellow card earlier in the season for shouting something I think that was the City game, for shouting something from the sidelines. So you like that he's got a little edge to his game as an 18-year-old, but less so much that and more just the ability to keep his composure while all that's going on. That's the harder part, because anybody can trash talk with each other, but the ability to keep his composure like that as an 18-year-old, especially as he continues to work his way into the lineup, full credit there, man.
Yeah. No, good pick. I've been noticing him more and more too. This week, I kind of have two names in mind. You didn't pick either of them, so I'd been thinking I'd be stuck with my second choice. But as I started thinking about it more and what I was going to say, I think I'm actually more comfortable picking him as my first choice now. So who has now become my second choice was Odegaard. Odegaard was Odegaard. He did great. He contributed, moved the ball around. He was the second one to push the ball at the middle and just go for it and try and make a play that way. He was also taking our corner kicks from the right side. Not quite as capably as Saka, but not bad. He's obviously decent in that role. But I'm going to pick Urian Timber. He's been on my mind the last few weeks, and not quite enough. But I think in this match, I just feel like seeing him be the first one, a defensive player ostensibly, right, be the first one to charge up the middle like that really made an impression on me. Like, that was good that he was comfortable doing that and kind of leading the team in a way, like saying, look, we can take it to these guys. And he just blasted it right at the keeper. I don't know how he felt about that shot afterwards, if he wished he'd done a little bit different with it, or if he didn't care and just wanted to take the shot. And if it got capably grabbed by the keeper, like it was no big deal, that's fine. But either way, like it was a bold move and it was needed. And it would have been even better if that had actually worked to inspire more confidence and more similar plays that ramped up in frequency, and we ended up scoring additional goals. That was already after we had scored our goal. But
I was about to say he didn't score, so I'm sure he didn't like the shot ultimately. But
yeah. Oh, actually, but you know what? Actually, look at the timeline. No. He did that. It was a few minutes before. So we did score only a few minutes after that.
Well, yes, but he didn't score. So
he did. He didn't.
Yeah. Did you like the shot? No, I didn't score.
No. But with what I was saying about, like, it actually didn't end up coming to anything, it may have. It may be that was part of what got us more comfortable with the play you mentioned earlier, where Martinelli crossed to Trossard, who then crossed in, and Havertz knocked it in. That may have been... That was a key part of that buildup. It was close enough to it. So what is coming up for next week?
Right. So 2 games. We're into that stretch of the season now. New Year's Day at Brentford. That'll be fun. So that's not an easy trip. And then Saturday, also not an easy trip, to Brighton. Both games are going to be on USA, both on later kickoffs, I think midday, middle of the day kickoffs. So just you can sleep in a little bit New Year's Day, which is kind of nice. But Brentford away and then Brighton away. So I think hopefully games that are going to be a little bit more open. I think both of these teams like to attack a little bit more. So
yeah,
hopefully that helps us a little bit in terms of generating opportunities. But it should be some good ones. And the goal is 6 points. That's all we can say right now.
Yep. Yeah, it'll be a fun episode to record after those two matches. How many times do you think we're going to get a Brentford and Brighton mixed up?
Not as much as I get Brentford and Bournemouth mixed up. See, I couldn't even think of them because I was just thinking Brentford and Brentford.
The same team.
Yeah, so...
Thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also listen to our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube with a link in the show notes. Your homework for today is to hit the like button on one of our videos this week, either this one that you're watching or one of our shorts. We record the show using Zencaster. If you'd like to try it out, you can support Gooner U by signing up using the link in the description, which also has links to everything we talked about and our social pages. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at DoveFrankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
And Happy New Year.